Welcome to the in the arena, Stu Wilkin. Mate, it's such a pleasure to have you on, bro. Honestly, it's been a long time in the making, and super excited to have a close friend of mine on the first episode. Bro, honestly, I just want you to rip into it. Just tell me your story, where you started, where you're from, where it's led to you in your career today.
Yeah, super excited to be on, mate. Been preparing for this and happy to be on and yeah, it's ready to tell my story. So I grew up in the UK, a place called Woking, so kind of a small town in Surrey, not too far from London. In terms of family, a little bit of an unusual one, only child, and my father had me when he was 60, and my mum a bit younger at 38, which is still quite young for a mum, I guess. So growing up as only child, not easy, especially with parents, around that age. Definitely didn't have like a very big family, so didn't have many interactions as a kid. I felt like I was quite shy growing up. My parents, they didn't have too many friends. They were new to the area, so it was difficult in some ways, like making friends at school and I guess not having the social skills that I would have now. So yeah, in that sense, it was tough. But I think the main thing that changed for me was football, really. At a young age, maybe about 7 or 8, my dad took me to my first football session. He was really passionate about football, big West Ham fan. So I guess he wanted to get me into football young. So I did that, and I was very shy my first few sessions, didn't really come out of my shell much. One of the few mates I did have actually went with me to give it a go together. He didn't end up liking it much, but I think after I came out of my shell and gave it a good go, I realized I wasn't bad and started to make friends and yeah, just kicked on from there really. That kind of experience really gave me confidence to go and make friends, and people looked up to me because football's a big thing in the UK. I feel like if you're half decent at that growing up through school, people start to talk about you and start to have a lot of respect for you. So I feel like those were kind of my early beginnings as far as I can remember, and that's
Being a both of us have got that in common. So obviously you're talking about your family. Being away from your family now and in the position that you are in your career, how does that affect you?
it's difficult, bro. But as I said, I've been away for many years. Like as we'll get into more of the story behind everything, I went to college. Obviously, that's how we know each other, and we're good mates and all of that. So, and even growing up through playing academy at Southampton, that was an hour and a half away from my house. So as I grew up dealing with that side of things more and more and being away from home, you do kind of get used to it, but I guess it never really makes it easier not being able to see like people you're close to for long periods of time and maybe not having the idea of when you're going to see them next. But I guess it comes down to that sacrifice that people do always talk about and yeah, it's for me I'm happy I dedicated like a lot of my life towards this and how it's gone with the journey.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's go off that. Let's talk about that journey. So you're talking about growing up in the UK,
Hmm.
right? And Woking and then getting into football.
Mm,
And you mentioned Southampton. So
yeah.
tell me your transition from as a kid, how you were playing, you could say grassroots football
Hmm.
as a kid, and then you moved on to one of the best professional academies in the world and has got that established connection where there's a lot of good players have gone through that academy. So talk to me about that process and how that all planned out.
Yeah, it went really fast. I feel like I joined my first grassroots team when I was 7 or 8, and I actually started off in goal. Going back to how shy I was as a kid, like I think they had their team already, and everyone knew each other. And one of my friends that I went to school with managed to get me in and invited me along to join. We'd play every Sunday. We'd probably train on a Saturday, I think it was, and I think no one wanted to go and goal, and because I was still like I didn't want to say too much and that kind of thing. I think I ended up being stuck in goal or I volunteered, either one. So I ended up doing that for I think the first year definitely, and maybe even part of the second year. And we did quite well, and we got promoted, and a lot of the good players they left, and I ended up staying. And they wanted to see me out on pitch, so I stayed and I played out on pitch for 1 year, and I ended up being half decent, quite good. So the next year, I followed my friend that had moved on the previous year and went to a slightly better grassroots team, and we did well. And I went up front. So I guess crazy transition going from in goal straight up front, but I think I had something up there and scored a lot of goals and got noticed by Chelsea, which was the nearest academy to my house and the team that I supported. So I think there was a connection from my primary school. One of the PE teachers had a connection there and said, this kid's got something, like give him a chance. So I managed to get myself a 6 week trial there. And that wasn't easy. There was a lot of kids, a lot bigger than me. There was some big name players that were in the same age group as me that would still be playing today, likes of Fikayo Tomori, Dom Solanke. I remember those two guys were in the same age group as me, even from that age. So it was tough, and I did okay, I thought, but I think looking back at it, I probably did struggle, and I didn't end up getting signed there, which was heartbreaking. It was the team that I loved. I thought I had a real chance. It was near my house. It was easy for my parents to take me to training. So that was disappointing, and it's not easy when you're maybe 9 years old to take that, I think. But I went back and I played again for that same Sunday League team and kept going. And then a few different clubs were interested. I think Fulham, Watford, Reading, some of the other nearby teams to where I lived. And I went to Fulham first and didn't get anything, and Southampton was next as well. They came and watched a few of my Sunday League teams, London Sunday League games, and I managed to get a trial down there. I remember, funny enough, my dad somehow sprained his ankle, like on one of the days he took me to trial at Fulham. I don't know what he did. He must have like slipped on a stair or something, and he couldn't take me, and it was really far from my house. But I remember that the scout was desperate for me to go and give it a go, so he ended up taking me that hour and a half to the first training session, and I think he even took me for a few more weeks to while my dad recovered, and I must have done well and these kind of things. So I signed there when I was, I think, under 10s, and then I stayed at Southampton all the way until I got released at 18, so 8 years at the club. And it was a crazy journey, I don't know what it is these days, but even back then, which is years ago now, it would be 2, 3 nights a week that you'd have to go back and forth from my house to the training ground, evening sessions. I wouldn't get home until 10 or 11, maybe. I have to wake up for school the next day quite early. So it was tough, but I loved it, like being that kid, the one of the few kids at my school playing academy football. And as I said, it's a big thing in the UK, and people look up to you. And yeah, I was really loving that time of my life, I guess, even though it wasn't easy. But yeah, it was definitely worth, I guess, missing out on things. I wouldn't so much socialize at parties and stuff with my friends. I was a bit different from everyone else, but to me, it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, bro, that's wicked. There's two things in there that I wanna talk about. You mentioned at the age of 9, getting rejected from like your boy, your love of the club of Chelsea, getting
Mm,
rejected and saying no. And then you went on to being signed by Southampton.
mm,
You went through an academy process for 8 years, and then you said that you got released.
mm-hmm,
So I've listened to Trent Alexander-Arnold start to talk about the reality of about 99% of players in the UK in these professional setups end up getting released and not being involved in football after the age of 18 years old. Now,
mm-hmm,
tell me about that process. Obviously, that comes with adversity. You said
mm-hmm.
heartbreak when you don't get signed.
Yeah.
What about the process leading up to getting released? Like, can you just go into a bit more detail about, first of all, the whole academy system itself in
Mm-hmm,
terms of your processes? Obviously, you're moving back and forth from home, you're traveling, like you're making that commitment.
mm-hmm,
Um, as you get older, does it get more serious, like more full time? And then when it gets to that point of being released, what's that like?
Yeah, it's an interesting system really because you're thrown into it at such a young age. I believe you keep getting deals. So even when you're 9 years old, I signed my first contract and it would have me there for I think 2 years, and then every 2 years you kind of have reviews, a bit like school. Like they say like what you're doing well, what you can improve on, and then they kind of say like whether you're going to be still a part of it or not. And people come and people go, and it's like hard to remember, but it's almost a weird thing to be told that you're not going to be there anymore. You know, for some of my teammates, like I'd be under 13s and there'd be different faces and people that were there, people that aren't there anymore. So yeah, for me it was an every 2 year thing. Is if you just keep doing well and you keep playing in the team, you'll keep getting signed. You know, but I guess as you said, it does get more and more serious. I think the big one is under 16s and then getting into the under 18s. So when I was there, it didn't have an under 17s and it didn't have an under 15s. It was kind of a big jump almost. So to get to that under 16s team is a big thing. And then to get to the under 18s, which is called like a scholarship, is another big step. So I guess around those times, there's almost more of a pressure for you to be excelling in the team and being in the lineup and doing well, you know. But yeah, it's definitely a tough process. Every year you would I'd have days where I'd miss school. So probably from year nine in England's about 13 or 14, I would miss a day, and then year 10 I missed 2 days, and then in year 11 I missed 3 days off school. So I'd go to school on a Monday and Friday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I'd be at the club, like kind of like being an apprentice. I'd do football. I'd stay with another family that would look after me for the night, and then I would do school there, etc., etc. So every year you kind of feel like that build up to work towards being that full time pro. And yeah, the big one is getting that scholarship at 18. Well, you're 16, but you'll play until you're 18, so you're guaranteed those 2 years as a scholar. And that's when I moved from Woking to Southampton. I moved full time in with the host family that looked after me the previous years when I would miss school and stay overnight. I was there full time. Monday to Saturday afternoon, we'd play the under 18s games, and then Sunday you'd get to go home for a day of the week. And that was tough, but it was living like the life into what a footballer would be, and what we all aspired to be all growing up. Um, but yeah, getting into that second year scholarship. So you do the first year and you get to the second year, and then around maybe Christmas time, January time, you know that the decision whether you're going to get carried on and get your first professional deal coming the following season is coming. That's what happens every year. People might already have one if they've come from other clubs, or some people sign scholarships that already have an agreement that you're going to get a pro after that, but I didn't. I just had my 2 year scholarship and was waiting really. I remember being one of the few guys that would get a chance in the under 21s. I remember I started one game and came off, was on the bench a few times, and not many of the other boys did that didn't already have professional deals. It was just me that didn't, and then a few other boys that had already agreed something. So I had an inkling that you know I might have a chance, and I felt like I was in a good place and doing well. But yeah, you just go into that meeting still not being 100% sure, not knowing. I remember they told us, I guess you don't know the date. There is not one date that they say you're having the meeting. Like the weeks kind of drag on, everyone's getting a bit anxious, but once they say, and then your heart drops, you know, it's on that day. It's what you worked most of your life to try and get is either a yes or a no. And I went into that meeting, I'd say 60-40. I'd say 60 I thought I was going to get it, 40 I didn't, and it ended up being a no. And I mean, my heart dropped, and I remember I was so upset, devastated about it in the moment. Like there was good support at the club around me, and they were like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't drive home because because I wanted to go home at that point, see my mum, and talk to different people about what had happened. And but yeah, it was a tough moment. I remember probably one of the toughest that I'd been through. But yeah, that's the reality for so many kids in that system growing up, and it's not easy, but definitely there was a good support system around me to help me with my headspace, and I always had that belief in myself that I could go in, like keep going in football, and something good would come out of it, you know.
Mate, it's thanks for sharing that, like the insight into how the actual system works, the
Mm,
process and the stories coming from a country with no real background in professional football.
mm,
It's super fascinating to me just about the whole process in the system. So
mm,
thanks for sharing that. I'm personally I'm a massive fan of Matthew McConaughey, and he's got
mm,
an incredible book called Green Lights. He talks about this thing in life where it's like some of the biggest setbacks, these red lights, and the biggest adversities that we face in life, like moments like that you experienced, putting all that sacrifice and effort over those years, and then to be told on one day that this is the end of the road.
mm.
Now, that can often lead to two options. You can either completely break down, or you can use that and it can actually turn into a massive green light for you. Now, for you, a lot of people listening won't realize that we were actually roommates at college, and that's how we actually know each other. But for me, I've had that privilege of spending a lot of time with you. But like, tell me about that process then being told no. What was your mindset shift in terms of, okay, now I've got to figure out what's next? What were like the processes that you went through? What happened to then lead you on to your next step in your journey?
Yeah, I remember being devastated for a number of weeks, and well, I think there was always that belief in myself and that idea that even if I got told no, like I already thought about if I was going to get told no, that I wasn't giving up and I was going to go to other teams and keep giving it a go. I had a friend slash agent at the time that was going to help me look for other teams, and Southampton, credit to them, they helped me get trials as well, and they were going to also help. So yeah, I definitely never stopped believing. Almost, it's cliche, but I'd say that I definitely had that belief that I was good enough to go out and find something. But I was also naive in a sense because, I mean, I was from a Premier League academy, and Southampton's very well regarded as being one of the best. And I mean, I was so close to getting that deal there. I was thinking surely a Championship or a League One side will want to pick me up, you know. Um, but the harsh realities of football is you go into these trials and they're not easy. There's other boys that have been there and they have clicks, and people don't want to pass you the ball. You're new. You've got to go in there, and maybe I'm not the flashiest player, but you got to go and show something. And I found that really difficult to get my head around. I felt like whenever I went into a trial, I was good enough to be there, and I didn't really quite realize that that wasn't enough. Like you have to go in and you have to go and put yourself around and be aggressive, and that's not really the kind of person that I am almost. So in that sense, it was a bit of a wake up call. I went on maybe 5 or 6 different category one, they call them. Category two is different levels of academies in England. It might be a Premier League or it might be a Championship team. But I went on all these trials and nothing ended up working out. A lot of teams liked me. There was an instance at Brentford where they offered me a deal, but then their academy folded. And if you weren't ready to be in the reserves or the first team, then they took the deal. They pretty much took the deal off me. So that was another point where I had a setback so close to the setback that I just had. So that one was really disheartening for me. But that was one of my first trials. So I thought, right, if they wanted me, but I was a bit unlucky here, then surely I'm good enough. But then as the weeks went on and it comes to around May, when just like the Premier League season, the academy season's all like done as well. You have the summer break, and I got released in I think January or February, and I set myself a target that if I didn't have anything by May, then I was going to go to America, because what they have is this thing called a a Premier League tour where our coach, Coach Seabolt, was on, and I think he was one of the head members of. There's a lot of schools that went on that tour, maybe 20 schools, and they do a presentation on the option of America to go there and play at a good level and get an education, and they look to pick up released academy boys like myself. So they would have done that presentation both years of my scholarship. The nearest one would have been before Christmas. I got released in January before the previous Christmas, so I would have been in contact with our coach, with a few other coaches that were interested in keeping in touch with me and my journey. So yeah, I set myself that goal that if I didn't get picked up by May, that I'd seriously consider going to America. But honestly, that really wasn't what I wanted to do. That was like a last resort for me. It wasn't giving up in my head, but it was kind of like taking another route almost. But that wasn't my first priority, if I'm honest. I wanted to get picked up by a Brentford or a Watford or a Sheffield United, one of the teams that I went to and trialed out and really gave it a good go. But that wasn't to be, and I said if I got to that point and nothing worked out, then I'm going all in for America. Like there's no ifs, buts or maybes. It got to a point where I just wanted someone to want me, and the American teams were the only people that were saying, yes, we want you, we think you're great, like you've got the academics, you've got the football ability, like come. And I think at that point I was broken down. I didn't want to trial anymore. I didn't want to go to all these places. I just wanted to go somewhere that would take me in and give me the time and kind of take the pressure off almost. So that's what I ended up deciding to do. And yeah, that's where we met, and that's where I had probably three and a half of the best years of my life.
Mate, that's the pathway and the journeys to get to one point where paths cross in life is quite incredible. And some of the things that I'm trying to advocate a lot is that everyone's journey is different. So I
Mm.
appreciate you sharing it. But moving into college, going from a place like living in London,
Hmm.
living in the UK, being around a professional academy in the setup,
Hmm.
to then the Midwest of America, Springfield, Missouri, of all places.
Hmm.
As I said, like I've got the insight of what your first few weeks were like, your first couple of months. I'd been there for 6 months already and had a semester under my belt. But tell me about the transition and like first of all, like your expectations going into college, and then the reality of what hit when you were there.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about the Midwest that way, because I specifically remember once I'd made my mind up that I was going to America, I hadn't said which school I was going to attend yet, and there was a few coaches that were talking to me and on my radar, and I just had an A4 blank piece of paper, and I had each school in one column, and then I had five things that were important to me in the other one. And I remember like football, the ability of the team, or like the football was number one, and then it would be, I think, location. I think I had like number of students. I had a few more categories that were important to me, and I ranked each school out of five for how they were. So I think location for the school we attended maybe was a 2 out of 5, but for football it was a 5 out of 5. And I think one of them might have been for how much that I trusted or liked the coach that was trying to recruit me, different things like this. So I went through that process, and then I ended up deciding to come to Missouri State. I think mainly for the football, and mainly because there was other international guys that reached out to me, and everyone seemed friendly, and yeah, I just went for that one. My expectations going in, I thought it was honestly going to be so much easier than it turned out to be. You know, you said it yourself, like I grew up in England. I attended a Premier League academy. I thought I was going to be the best player there by like a mile, is what I thought in my head. I turned up to pre-season. I wasn't as like anywhere near fit enough that I could have been. When I showed up, well, I expected, yeah, me to be technically better than everyone, but a lot of players were just as good, if not better than me on the ball, and everyone was probably better than me physically. I mean, you saw it yourself. America's a very physical version of football or soccer. You know, people were 4 or 5 years older than myself that were playing in the team, and it really wasn't easy to try and adapt to that, and to our coach who demanded so much physically, tactically, technically. It was a tough transition and really eye-opening because I took the option to almost get away from all the pressure that I'd been through so many years, and thought it was going to be like a good way for me to keep fit and still improve and have that and get my degree. But I didn't have any idea how hard it was going to be in the sense of football and life in general, I guess.
When you say life in general, do
Mm.
you mean the balance of what it is to be a student athlete, or do you just mean moving away and being in a completely different
I
environment?
think more the balance of a student athlete. I didn't know that there'd be early mornings where we'd go to weights and I'd be exhausted after that, and then you'd still have to go to class, and then you'd eat, and then you'd still have to go to training, and then even after training, you'd still have to study more and complete your study hours, and then by that time you've gone through the whole day and you're done and you go to sleep and you repeat, you know. And I was used to something similar at academy, but on this level, it was definitely different and something to get used to. And yeah, as you said, the other side of things where you're getting used to new people and being so far away from home, the environment's obviously a lot different. I remember staying with one of the older boys when you first come, and I was on a sofa for I don't know how many weeks while I waited for the dorms to open. And that was definitely not the type of thing that I was expecting or used to. So it was a tough transition in that sense, but I said I was going to do it, so this is what you get for saying you're going to do it. You know, I wanted to go through it, and us freshmen, the new players, we're all in it together, and everyone's got a different background and everyone's got different expectations. And I think it helped that there was a lot of international boys that you saw going through it and going on and doing well and completing the time there, getting the degrees and moving on. So that was definitely motivation to keep going.
Yeah, mate, like you take me back to some stories and memories that were just absolutely gold. And it's funny, like when you say when you make that kind of commitment, things that you do to get through the situations that you're in,
Yeah.
just to keep pursuing this dream, to keep pursuing your potential in these areas. Now, stepping away from like the football side of that career of college, of that journey, talk to me about like the skills, the lessons, like the habits that being a student athlete, what that demanded of you, and how you actually grew as a person during that time.
Yeah, I think college honestly molded my life as I live it today. I learned so many things about organizing my time and making sure my time management was on point. The way that I still plan my days today, maybe not as rigid because I don't have as many things to do, but that side of things taught me, yeah, where to be and how to plan my day and make time for this, that, and the other. Like how to look after myself as growing up as a kid. You know, I grew up as an only child, and then I went into an academy where people are paid to look after you. I went to college and I'm there, and no one's paid to look after me. I've got to figure it out myself. I've got people that can help me around me, but they've got their own stuff to look after themselves as well. You know, so I think definitely I grew up a lot in those years. I learn how to do laundry and clean and cook, and you might laugh at those things, but for me that was big for how I moved to another country that we'll get into and how I live by myself now, you know. And the skills of just being a better person and meeting so many different people from so many different backgrounds, taking bits and pieces from their culture, teaching people from the culture that I've been involved in, and yeah, it's just so much learning was done in that time. I don't even know where to start, honestly. The discipline that we all had to have to keep our heads in training when things were tough, and yeah, get up every morning at I don't know what time for weights and for training, and the long nights on the bus. It just gives you that mindset that nothing can break you. Even now, like, I'd like to say my life's not as hard as maybe it was back then in some ways. But yeah, it definitely showed me that I could get through anything, you know.
Yeah, mate, I couldn't agree with you more in terms of moving away from home, bro. Like getting away from mum and dad, and then all of a sudden you're swimming on your own, and you're
Yeah,
just trying to. I said in my first podcast, like the first year, bro, it's just an absolute whirlwind. Like
yeah.
I remember it just going by so fast because you're honestly just trying to find your feet. You're trying to figure out where classes are, where like your first couple of weeks you just feel lost. It's being in a completely new place, and it's crazy.
Hmm.
Um, Bro, like being your mate during college was a lot of fun because I did get to see you grow as a person as well, and not just as a talented athlete and who you were, but like as a person and what you grew into as well, which was super exciting because when it came time to both of us going our different ways and graduating, you took a different path compared to what I did, and we both probably had um similar goals, similar things that we wanted to achieve. And it's just super interesting how we just started from different paths. We ended up on a very similar one, and then we both went separate ways again.
Hmm.
Tell me and tell other people like what happened after college or during your last year. Let's talk about that last year.
Hmm.
During that time, what was your mindset like going into knowing that you don't have another year of college?
Yeah, you know, it's tough because you've done all these years of college and you're kind of there, you're settled by now, you like the routine, you're one of the older guys, you're doing well in the team. My last year, I did a lot better than my first 3 years in terms of football. But there's definitely pressure. Being international in America, like the dream for a lot of us, me, you, and some of the other boys on the team was to play pro after college. That was my goal going into college, and that was my goal at the end of college. Some people's goals change and they don't want to carry on football after, but mine was still very firmly that I was going to go on and try and have a professional career. Um, but yeah, I there was pressure to do well. I figured out where I wanted to be. I knew America was going to be tough for me because sometimes if you're not a goal scoring striker, those international spots are very difficult to come by. You and me both know that in America. So I had my sights kind of elsewhere. In my junior year, the third year of college, I reached out to people in Malaysia because my mother's Malaysian and I have family here. I'd seen that, funny enough, someone who lived near me in Woking was also half Malaysian and had a very successful career in Malaysia, playing football both for a club there and internationally. And it looked like his lifestyle and everything I wanted to be in England or in America, that pro dream could be alive here in a part of me that I was from. So I had that connection, and they managed to sort me a trial, which I did in my junior year. I went out and trialed and had an agreement there for when I finished school in America that I was going to go and start my pro career in Malaysia. So I was already knew that that was kind of on the horizon. So I guess that took a bit of pressure off, but you know, I still wanted to do well and finish off my years there. And I was really excited for the next step to come out here and live the life that I've been living now for the past 3 years playing here.
It's so sick, man. It's like you wouldn't when you were going through your time at Southampton, I bet that it wasn't even on your radar. The fact that you could have gone over and then yet going down that journey and going through a different path and how it opened so many different doors. Like I said earlier, those setbacks have just led you to kick on into a new area.
Hmm.
So when you graduated, you finished up, you went straight over and started your pro life. Tell me, what was that transition like? Because I've got insight from conversations we've had that it wasn't the easiest transition.
Hmm.
But like for you, tell me about like the details of what actually happened because that was going into COVID, which was a very tough time for everyone as well.
Yeah, definitely. I graduated school December 2019, right before COVID kicked in. And then I was waiting to come out to Malaysia. Everything had already been sorted. But then there was a delay because of things in Malaysia and documents I needed and whatnot. And then COVID hit um, around March 2020. I was in England at that point, working hard, training by myself, getting ready to come out, still waiting on that call, and then COVID hit, and then everything kind of got delayed for me. Season stopped in Malaysia. Things weren't quite in place for me to come over, and in some ways, so I had to hold on, and I had I think 8 months in the UK where I had to like everyone was in isolation, but I still had the goal of mine to be fit and wait for that call, and it wasn't easy. I'd sleep, I'd wake up, the first thing I'd do was look at my phone and see if I was ready to go yet. I mean, and then that just that just kept me going. I'd try to keep as fit as possible because I learned from past experiences. I didn't know what to expect. I wanted to expect that I had to be the fittest player in the team to do well, you know. So I kept working hard, moving back in with my mom. So I had to pay my way. I hadn't lived at home for a while, so I went and got a job. I'd wake up early, just like America. I'd go to work. I'd make a bit of money, and then I'd finish in the afternoon, and then I'd go train. I'd go to the gym, or I'd go to the local park and kick balls against a wall for maybe an hour, and just try keep the touches in and watch YouTube and watch people like Matt Sheldon, who plays in USL in America, teach me how to dribble through cones, and felt like a kid again, you know. But I did anything to try and keep fit and be ready for that moment, which happened later on that year, and around October, I got the call that everything was ready and set up for me, and COVID had settled down a bit. It was towards the end of the league season, so I went over then and trained with the team. They finished off the season, and then again I had a period where I was on my own. It was the break in Malaysia is around December time, where they have a month off, a break from the league, ready for the new season. So I was there, and some of the other mixed players that I play with would already have gone back home, so I didn't have many friends at that point. Uh, but yeah, I was in that environment where it was still kind of isolated. I moved into my place. I was living alone for the first time. I was figuring things out. I went to IKEA and I don't know, spent how much of my mum's money because I wasn't getting paid yet to try and set my place up nicely and be comfortable and yeah, do everything that I got taught by all my college roommates, how to cook for myself, how to clean, how to look after myself, and that process started all over again. It was tough, but uh, it was tough, but this is what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do this and be at this exact moment for the last year and a half when I first knew about the opportunity of my mixed heritage to come out and play in Malaysia, you know. So that's where I knew I wanted to be, and no matter how hard it was, I was going to stick with it and yeah, prove that all of that time was worth it, you know.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Did during that time did you feel like you were out of your depth at all? Like moving to a different country,
Hmm.
not having the language, living on your own,
Mm.
all of these things can kind of hit you quite quickly. And I found that certainly moving to Finland as well,
Mm.
where you can feel like you are a bit of the odd one out. Like
Hmm.
you do feel very isolated. So did you feel like out of your depth in that sense, but then also moving to a different level of football?
Hmm.
Like you move up into the professional world, and when you're moving up these levels in life, it could be in any area. It could be moving into a new job if you don't know what you're doing. It's like it can be this sense of like imposter syndrome
Yeah.
almost. Was there any like self-doubt that was creeping into you at that point just because like you're spending so much time alone too?
I'd say that at the start it was maybe a different kind of imposter syndrome because I believed so much that everything happens for a reason, and I really believed that this next step was meant for me. Like I truly believed that I should have been pro at 18, but for whatever reason, I went on a different path and did it a different way, and I ended up in a place that I didn't think I'd end up playing football. I thought that football was going to be for me in England, but it ended up being turning professional for me in Malaysia. And I had been to Malaysia many times before, like my family lives here, so that did help a little bit different from you and moving to Finland. But again, growing up in the UK, I didn't know how to speak Malay and in that sense, but I did know that a lot of other players had been on the same path as me. There's quite a few mixed boys that play in Malaysia that are also half Malaysian, half from somewhere else, whatever. But so I so I did have that where people would like know what I was going through and have people to talk to about these times. And also it did help that once the season started up, I was put in the development team of Johor, which is the top club in Malaysia. So I started off there, and it kind of gave me confidence that I could do it at that level. It was still considered professional. It was kind of like playing in the under 23s in England, like Premier League under 23s. It was the same kind of thing. There was foreigners in my team. There was young boys, even younger than myself, playing. So that was a good first step for me, like gaining that experience, and I really felt like that I was doing well at that level. And by the time the year ended, I felt like I could push and play at the top level of Malaysian football, which is the Super League. So I played that 1 year in the Premier League, and the next year I had a loan spell and played in the top league. But I think that imposter syndrome was more in a sense my second year, because the first year I felt like I could do it, and there was younger boys than me, and I felt like I needed to be at that next step to really have the eyes on me to show what I could do almost. Um, and that's when I turned up on loan, and I was in the top league, and all the TV cameras are on the top league, and that's where I had my first Super League game, and that's where I felt like I watched like Johor, which the team I was at the previous year, I watched all the first team games, and I knew all the players, and I knew a lot of the players that they would play against. And now I was in that same league with the same cameras on me. And that first game, I remember feeling a bit out of place. Like I almost fanboyed over some of the other players that were kind of my teammates, kind of weren't, watching them on TV play. And now I was in that same level, and I knew I was good enough, but I just didn't feel like it was me really there, until I got into my first few games and started doing well and kicking on and concentrated on trying to earn that starting spot. So that's where I feel like I really felt that kind of thing.
Was it the pressure? Was it the pressure of like of being a pro and the pressure of having the fans and the cameras, just something that you hadn't experienced that much before?
Yeah, I'd say it was partly that and partly something that I've tried to blank out now. I'd say that people talking about you, I when I was playing in the second division, not that many eyes were on me, not that many people were talking about me, and I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to try and catch people's eyes to push for national team and push to be a starter in the top division, and once that finally did come and I had that opportunity, I think that's where the pressure came, but that's where that drive also came, where I said like I know I'm a good player. I know that I can offer something, and people are now going to see like what I came here to show, like the reason why I came almost back to Malaysia, to play and to be a pro here, and like really try and make a name for myself here and get into national team and all these things, So I'd say it's at the start it was the pressure that the outside, like in my head, people looking at me. But after that shifted, it was more the pressure that I put on myself to perform every week. So I knew that people could see that I was playing well, and I was ready to keep pushing and pushing and climb the ladder here almost.
That's wicked. It's such an incredible mindset to shift. And then in terms of that, bro, it's like that led you on to getting some more exposure. You got called up to the Malaysian national team. You've now played 9 games. You've scored 4 goals. You you were saying there's a thing in the world where people like there's an overnight success. Like
Hmm.
they see these 3, 4 games that you've played, you've scored a couple of goals. Now everyone's like, oh, Stu Wilkin, overnight success. But the reality is, you've just told your story that it started back in grassroots football from the age of 7, right? It's been this whole process and this whole journey. Now, with that comes a light. Does the lifestyle change, or how do you manage that? Because other people from the outside see you now as who've never met you as this professional footballer, but to you, you're still my mate Stu, regardless of where you're playing in the world. And how do you manage that yourself?
Yeah, it's something I haven't really experienced before. It's all new to me, and honestly, I've found it difficult. Maybe this season I haven't been maybe performing as last season, and I'd happily admit that. And it's been tough, to manage things and try and repeat the levels that I've you might peak to, and then you might come back down, and it's difficult because now I would have played bad last season, but now when I play bad this season, a lot more people see because there's so many more eyes on you now that you move up the levels and you play national team and you play in the top division and all these things. So it's managing that headspace to never get too high and never get too low. That's something that I always have in the back of my mind and that I value that someone said to me once. So I think that's key really. The highest highs, you don't go and read all the comments about you that everyone loves you, and the lowest lows, you don't go and read the bad comments about you that people are saying online and all of this stuff. So I think it's a balance, and it's something that I've struggled with the last few months, but it's trying to always, be level headed and take one thing at a time and yeah, go into that next training session, do your best and prove to yourself why you are where you are now, and try and always give your all. You can't play well all the time, and I think that's the thing that everyone's got to live with. You've got to live with in sports, the wins, the losses, the highs, the lows. Yeah, it's all about trying to balance it. Is what I've come to learn, and I'm still trying to deal with.
Yeah, do you have systems in place to deal with that? Like, do you have any like practices in terms of, like people meditate, journaling, um, like cold therapy, things like do you have specific things that you do, or you have like a routine that you stick to manage that?
I've said that I'd say that since I've moved into the pro game, there's so much more free time than there was in college. I feel like college is like a whirlwind where it's regimented almost. You've got weights, then you've got school, and you've got no time to think about anything else other than what you're doing day to day, and the days fly. But sometimes the days, as you would know, they're long. There's maybe one training session a day for a few hours, and the rest of the day is up to you. So I've tried meditating a bit. I've tried gym in the morning a bit. I've tried journaling, planning my days, not planning my days, eating in, eating out. And I think it's just all been a bit of trial and error and what works for you. I know that I like to plan and I'm quite an organized person, I like to think. So I think that's definitely something that helps me. So I'd put every day of the week out. I'd put in everything that I have to be at. I'd put in things that I'd like to do. For instance, I like doing ankle exercises once or twice a week because I've had injury problems with that in the past. And then after that, I'll kind of leave it blank because I feel like I'm a person that if I really say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do that no matter what. And that kind of gets in my head. And I feel like I need to be a bit freer than that. Um, I've got times where I eat before training, but now I'm not so strict on what I eat. I order from a delivery service that cooks for me different meals and they have a different menu every week and I choose that option because I know I like to eat healthy food, for instance. But I'd say in terms of regime, like it was in college, it's a bit freer and that's what works for me, what I've come to find out anyway. I've tried it different ways and I'm still evolving it. I'm still open to new ideas and and what works best for me, how much sleep, how much not to sleep, you know. And I think it's an ever changing cycle, but it's trying to get to that sweet spot and sticking with it for a while if it works, and maybe binning it off and trying a few different things if it starts not to work, you know. So that's me anyway, but I know everyone's different, and what I would say is it's what works for you that counts.
It's that's brilliant advice, man. It's good to hear from another perspective as well because I find it too, mate. Like, as you said, the days can get long, and then if you spend it overthinking or you are so regimented that you have to keep doing stuff in order to keep being productive, to have that freedom to be like, you know what, I don't actually have to do this at this point. I can just give myself a wee bit of leeway, and then
Hmm.
you kind of find that you find yourself a wee bit more relaxed, and if you can put like that focus and energy into something else, where yeah, you do go out for a good breakfast somewhere, or you do treat yourself to a coffee or something like that every now and then. Like you're human at the end of the day, and it's just all about trying to have the best experiences. I find that personally, it reflects in performance as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely seen that. Once I find myself more settled and happier on the day to day, then I feel like you're in a better, positive, more positive mindset when you're turning up to training. And at the end of the day, we're all doing something like me, you, we're doing something that we love. You take away where you are in the world and things that adversity does hit, you know. But at the end of the day, we do something that we love every day, and you got to be grateful for the little wins. I think like when you've had a bad session or you're not having you're playing a string of bad games. I try and remind myself that I'm grateful for where I am now and how far I've come, and I get to do this, continue to do this every day, you know. So I think it's the little things that count, and that positive mindset that can really get you a long way. As a lot of football is in the mind, I believe.
Yeah, that's perfect because that's actually leading me into one of my last questions here. You just said like when you look at where you've come from during this process, like I gave you a few things I wanted to talk about today. Reflecting on your journey and you telling your story now, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy journey when you plan it out in the conversation that we've just had. You don't really stop and think about it sometimes, but yeah, it gives me a sense of pride, and you know, it repays the hours that so many people have put into me to try and live this dream, you know. Maybe it's not the Premier League dream that I had when I was a kid and playing for Chelsea, but you know, it's still a dream to say that I can be a professional footballer, and that's always been the dream. And it's taken me in one direction, pulled me in the next direction, and now I'm here. And I truly believe that everything happens for a reason, and this is what I was meant to be doing in this moment, you know. Maybe it's not what I'm meant to be doing in 5, 10, 15 years time, but at this moment, this is what I believe is what's meant for me. So I'm grateful for where I've been and all the people that have helped me along the way. And, you know, sometimes you got to stop and you got to think about how far you've come, no matter how small the wins are. If you're still on the journey to try and get to the dream, it's all like the little wins that count, you know.
So powerful, bro. Yeah, awareness and to staying present, so powerful. Super incredible. All right, bro. Three quick questions for you before we wrap things up. Um, your three keys for success. Three things. Three keys for success.
Oh, I'd say number one, consistency. I'd say, yeah, I'd say that. Um, do the little things, do the simple things well would be another one. And then positive mindset would be another one.
Class. Class. My dad said that always growing up. Do the simple things well.
Yeah,
That's
I do
drilled
like
into
that
my
one.
brain. Yeah, brilliant. What would you your career how it's panned out now? What would you tell 18-year-old Stu right now? if you got a 60-second phone call to him, what would you tell him as soon as he's been released?
Wow, that's hard because so many emotions going on there. I'd just say, it's not the end of the world. There's so much more ahead of you and so much that you don't know that can happen. You don't know what paths life's going to take you in. I mean, this is what was meant to happen for you at this moment in time. I know that you wanted this dream so much, but there's an even bigger dream that you can't see yet that's ahead of you, and that's more what's meant for you than what's just happened, what I wanted now. So I'd say to keep positive and keep looking forward, and what where life takes you is all just a journey, and to follow your gut and keep working hard is what I'd say.
Special, man. Special. Last but not least, tough question, but what's your why? Like why, like Stu, like why do you play football?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one.
Not letting you off easy, man.
Why do I play football? I'd say it, honestly say it because I just enjoy playing football. Like when you take away everything, like the if you take away it all, like no matter how good you are or where it's taken you, and like what you make from football, I'd say if you can take all that away, I think just when you're a kid kicking a ball around, and now I'm still kicking a ball around, like I can honestly say that I enjoy playing. Like you might have times where you hate playing and you don't want to wake up for training and you don't want to do that early morning session and you're exhausted or you're injured. But when it comes down to it, there's moments where I just sit there and I think, yeah, I don't know how I'm doing this as my job, but I just enjoy playing. I'd say that's my why.
That's epic, man. That's so epic. Bro, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on In the Arena on the podcast, the very first guest that we've had. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck for the games coming up. Going to be watching so close with your career, how it pans out, and I'm super excited to see what's to come, man. Your potential is unlimited, and it's just going to be fun to watch you have the journey. So, thank you so much for taking the time, bro.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you.
My man.